Good morning, everyone, and happy Tuesday. I'm Julie Livingston of Want Leverage Communications, and today I have a bonus episode of PR Patter, my weekly show where I chat with the phenomenal marketing and communications people from across my network. Today, I'm having a special guest. It's because I think that B2B CMOs really need to think differently in 2024. So I'd like to welcome Drew Nizer to the broadcast of CMO Huddles. There are only two people in the whole world who have interviewed more CMOs than Drew. He's published two books, over 370 podcast episodes, and more than 500 articles, which give him a vast reservoir of case histories he draws upon when coaching CMOs one-on-one or via CMO huddles, the B2B CMO community that he created. CMO huddles also allowed Drew to close Renegade, the agency he founded and ran for 30 years, which you might be familiar with, and relaunch it as a media brand that supports the CMO community. He's the author of 12 Steps to Building Unbeatable B2B Brands, a finalist for the ANA's Marketing Book of the Year, and the CMO's Periodic Table. Drew is an Ad Age contributor, and he's written the CMO Spotlight column for a decade and is ranked one of LinkedIn's top 15 voices in marketing, which is just so incredibly impressive. So welcome, Drew.
Well, it's great to be here, Julie. Thank you so much for having me and doing your show.
So why is life so difficult for B2B CMOs? I mean, I hear this all the time. And, to get started, I actually asked ChatGPT about it. And here are some of the reasons that they came back to me with. Complex sales cycles, which B2B cycles tend to be longer and more intricate. Aligning sales and marketing efforts. ROI measurement. Well, that's with all marketing. It's just very difficult. Content creation. And we're going to talk about that in a minute, about how B2B CMOs can really get more innovative next year in their content. Technology integration. Keeping up with trends. Global market challenges. Proving the value of marketing, well, that's included in ROI, and managing their budget constraints. But I want to hear from you about, let's start with innovation, because, well, first of all, I love your penguin. I love how you equate the CMO huddle to the penguin. So I think you should put on your penguin hat.
Oh, all right. We can do that.
Okay.
There we go. All right. Yeah.
Love it.
I am here as penguin in chief.
Okay.
But here's the thing. It's not just silliness, and it is silly. It turns out that a group of penguins is called a huddle. So that's number one. Okay.
Great.
It also turns out the penguins are amazing teamwork, problem-solving birds that are incredibly resilient. So the story, and in fact, the newsletter for this month is about, 10 things that B2B CMOs can learn from penguins.
Yeah.
And it's amazing parallel. So the reason I put on this hat because I want to make the point that we're going to get to, which is B2B doesn't have to be boring. A little bit of weird goes a long way. And this might be a lot of weird, but I'm having a lot of fun with it, and the community is too. And we even have these wonderful stress penguins that we give to our community when something special happens. Okay, but I want to go through those things that ChatGPT, and this is why it's so important to understand ChatGPT. I would argue that was not artificial intelligence, that was average intelligence, because those things were true 5 years ago. And they were true, they're true today, but they're not why this moment is so challenging. The reason this moment is so challenging is rampant short-termism caused by what has been a B2B recession that has been invisible under the consumer strength of the economy. But there's a B2B recession, and it's been going on for probably a year. In our community, probably 80% had budget cuts. And so it's all the things that you mentioned, plus less money and what was a long sales cycle a year ago has become a longer sales cycle because the CFO does what they always do in recessions. They become the CFO. And so it's really hard.
Right.
It's a particularly hard time. And then I want to add one other thing. So regardless of whether you are pro or against remote work, this has an impact on on every leader, because retention goes down. Employees that were hired post-pandemic, your chances of keeping them are so much thinner because there's no human bond between those, because those people haven't come together. So you've got a bad economy and you've got weaker connections with your employees, which are the key to your success. So that's what makes this moment so special and why our community needs their stress penguins. So that gives you that, but I think that's a really good way of looking at ChatGPT too. That average answer was good, but didn't tell you anything new.
No, not at all. Not at all. So how can B2B CMOs start to really get from boring to innovative?
So first, it's a recognition that there's an epic battle, and there always has been, for mind space. That's what we're trying to do as marketers. Get locked in, stand for something. You need some real estate in the brain. And you don't get there necessarily by simply, I mean, you can bludgeon someone, spend $1 billion and say 15% will save you, 15 minutes will save you 15%. That's a very rational thing. But you need $1 billion to get that message through to people,
Right.
and repeat it. B2B marketers are notoriously underspend on a percentage basis relative to B2C brands. So for them, they actually, in my mind, need to be more creative than less in order to own some real estate. And here's some math from the B2B Marketing Institute. 80% on a scale of 1 to 5, if you look at B2B creative, and I think this is just that runs on LinkedIn, 80% ranks a 1 out of 5. So though it's a joke, but if you get to 2, you're in the top 20%.
That's
which is crazy. Now,
that is
now
crazy.
you could separate. Look, if you're a really good targeter and you have a very good, concise, non-creative, rational message, you could be okay if you spend more. But you can, like, with creativity accounts for about 47%, I think, roughly, of effectiveness. So again, a little creative in B2B goes a long way. And what I find is, every time someone says, hey, give me an example of a great B2B brand that is really killing it on a creative basis, it's hard.
Yeah.
It is so hard because CMOs turn over too quickly. They change campaigns all the time. They don't stay with a single idea that is at its core, that is not even necessarily product dependent. And so they just forget the basics. And, it's funny, and the part of it is short-termism and all sorts of other things, but a friend runs this company, Case Paper. We worked with them. This was when I still had an agency. And this was a brand that was all about, I'm rambling, but was all about customer service, right? So the big brand idea was on the case paper, on the case. And that became a rallying cry for employees. They had to deliver on it. It was a proof point. We broke it down. And then they had a sense of humor. You add that so they actually put on their logo. So the combination of on the case and a sense of humor has really, this brand continues to thrive despite the recession, despite paper shortages. It's really kind of incredible. And where it shows up, and it's fun because I was talking to the president the other day, and recruiting, they put a little humor in their recruiting ads.
Oh my God, that changes the whole game, right?
It's the whole game. It's a whole
People
game.
want it more. They want to be happier at work and life. So why
Right.
wouldn't they want to work for a company like that?
So, companies think about, okay, well, we shouldn't be boring in our employee ads, but how could you even think about being boring in anything that you do? None of it. We switch the channel. If something's boring and doesn't get our attention, we move on. And so if you want to own something, you need to be simple, clever, and consistent.
Absolutely. Talk more about salespeople, the role of salespeople, the changing role of salespeople, because I think this is also really interesting.
Yeah. So this is something that I've been really watching very carefully, because the good news is that marketing, the folks in our community at least, work really closely with their sales counterparts. I mean, they present together. They don't allow this separation. Their decks are the same decks. There's an interconnectivity. When it's really working well, someone from marketing is sitting in on the sales meeting, someone from sales is sitting in on the marketing meeting, and they're in lockstep, because the old sort of notion of a handoff where it goes from a lead to sales to qualify it, that's done, because everybody at the end of the day gets rewarded for revenue, right? And so that's the good news in terms of where this is going. The bad news is that in some sales journeys, I was talking to one that there were 130 touch points between first, coming onto the website and closing the deal. 100 of those were marketing. I think less than 10 of those were actually like the lead salesperson talking and negotiating the deal. And so my question is really, can we rethink about sales so that if you and I have an issue or we're going to buy a thing, we want to talk to a product expert.
Right. We don't want to feel like we're being sold.
Right. We want to talk to a product expert.
Yeah.
So what I would love to see, and there are a few companies experimenting with this, is what if every salesperson was no longer a salesperson, but was really a product expert? And to some extent, Julie, you see this in SaaS organizations where they have customer success managers. Those people are both product experts and they get incentivized to.
Right.
But what their job is to make sure that the customer is using the product, the service as effectively as they can, because if they can, they'll spend more money. And that's a mentality that I love, that I would love to see happen in the sales world. So, my friend Andy Paul, who's very big in sales, will disagree with a lot of what I said, and he's right in a lot of cases as well. And I think this is just my perspective is everybody does it this way. So somebody who does it a different way may find a real competitive advantage.
Yeah. Why not try? Why not experiment a little bit? Talk a little bit about budgeting and kind of rejiggering, reallocating budgeting towards program spend.
So this is something that I noticed in, I think about a year and a half ago. Well, about a year and a half ago, we had a series of huddles on just this concept of budgeting. And one of the questions that I would ask is, talk about your overall allocation in 3 buckets: people, programs, and technology. And there was a lot of ranges, but it sort of would average out that people would be about 50%, programs would be about 40%, and technology was creeping from 10, sometimes all the way up to 20%. And to me, the minute it's over 10%, it's really a problem. But I would love to see some of that technology money back. And I'll explain that in a second. And the problem with spending, say, 60% on people is all that money you're spending on people does not equal reach. And reach is everything. Well, frequency matters too, but reach means that you're not just reaching the 5% of the people that are in the market today. You are reaching the 95% that may be in the market 6 months from now, or a year from now, or 2 years from now. So where I think the opportunity is to say, you know what, we could be a little more efficient with our people. Generative AI will help that. Let's put 40% of our dollars in people, 55% of our dollars in programs. So now look, we just took program dollars from 40 to 55%, and we reduced tech to 5%. The rationale for that? Most of the technology in the tech stack is underused because they don't have enough people to use it. And
so it's a catch-22.
Well, and also it's heavily weighted to what if we just differentiate between demand creation, which is the whole market, and demand capture, which is the 5% that are in the market at any given time, the tech stack is all about demand capture. So you're focusing on, just a tiny bit of your business opportunity. And that's, I think, why, and it makes sense. There's so much great technology out there. And the minute we start talking about it, it's go, oh, that's cool. Oh, that's cool. And it's shiny. Oh, we could get that. But it's incrementalism. It's like, oh, we could get a 0.001% improvement on click-throughs here.
Yeah, it may not be worth it.
Well,
I think it's definitely worth, reevaluating the kind of technology you're spending money on, for sure. What about this idea of a 3-year plan? I mean, that's something you really don't hear about a lot.
Oh, I know. I know.
Why?
Well, and again, this goes back to your first question about trends and why it's so difficult. I don't ever remember a period of short-termism. I think it's the new epidemic. And there is, and part of it is the cost of money. So VCs, PE firms really pulled back and said, okay, marketing, you used to get X percent, now you get X percent minus 50%. So you're going to do more with less. And you're just going to focus on demand capture. And the thing is that here's the interesting part. And this is great when you talk to a CMO who's been in their position for 4 years, because they have this data and they know how to use it. So the pandemic began March 2020, right? By April 2020, a lot of companies in B2B had cut their budgets in half just because, first of all, half of it was going to events. They couldn't do events anyway. So they just gave it all back. And what they can look at now is they can look at the data 6 months to 12 months out, and they can look at their pipeline and their closes, and they can see, oh my gosh, there was a huge dip because we stopped investing. People stopped learning about us. Our reach went way down. We weren't doing these events, and events are really good both for demand capture and demand creation. Yeah. So there's data that shows what happens when you cut your budget, when you think short term. It's there in almost every company. And I was talking to a CMO who was there and did it. And recently they were in a budget meeting, and the CFO said, okay, I want you to give back 15%. And the CEO said, don't you remember what happened? And stopped it. And so this CMO got to keep it. That's the rare situation.
Yeah. Very rare. I mean, I think also, as you said, when you've talked to CMOs who have been lucky to be in their jobs for more than 3 years, they really have that historical perspective, which is valuable, I think.
Oh my God.
So and also valuable. If you allow if the CMO has the opportunity to be innovative and try new things, they can take more than a year to prove themselves.
Well, there's certain things that
it depends on what they're trying to innovate. But
so, I mean, in an ideal scenario, a new CMO goes in and finds the quick fixes in the first 3 months. And there's always quick fixes. There's little things that just were not thought about and fresh eyes could do it. But the problem happens is the new CMO comes in and throws everything else out. Because that last CMO must have been an idiot because they left, right? So they throw all that stuff and they try to rejigger. I mean, look, the problems that businesses solve don't change with the CMO. The problems that the customers have don't change with the CMO. So it's this ridiculous, again, but that causes the short-termism. Anyway, forget that one for a moment. And let's just think about, what do great marketers do? Great marketers create big brands that stick in the mind, and they often do it by creating markets. That's why you see this trend of chief market officer, to sort of emphasize the fact that they are thinking longer term and they have a strategic seat at the table. And this is the problem. If you are a chief marketing officer, in theory, that chief means you are an executive who was responsible for the business, not marketing. You are an executive who is responsible for the overall health of the business. That gives you permission to lay out a 3-year plan drive the strategy with the organization, work on embedding a marketing idea within the product. Lots of good things. I mean, think about at GE, health imagination and eco imagination. Those were marketing concept that became billion-dollar businesses.
Sure.
That's what I mean by marketing creating markets.
I love that. I love that. How can data capture help to drive personalization in marketing?
So this is not, first of all, it's not an easy answer. And second, it's going to get worse before it gets better. So we had a recent bonus huddle with a couple of media brands and media experts, media buying, media directors, pardon me. And what they both talked about almost was a Google apocalypse, in that search as SEO results and SEO as we know it has changed in the last 3 months. And nobody seems to be talking about it except for the folks in SEO. But if you look at a landing page on Google, you Google something, the half of the page now is like snippets and trying to answer it. And their ads, you only see maybe 3 company websites listed on the homepage. You used to see 5 to 7. That's crazy. Okay. So anyway, Google has also said that they are going to stop providing or tracking third-party data. So when I say deploy data-driven personalization, I recognize that this just got a lot harder because you don't have third-party data. But what it means is that every marketer really needs to be thinking about their first-party data, right? They have lists, they have people who come to the website, they have people who demonstrate certain behaviors and characteristics that make them opportunities, right? They watch a demo, they go to the pricing calculator, they do certain behaviors. So now we can eventually figure out who that person is. And so, hey, Julie, thanks for visiting our website. I noticed that you got a demo. Would you like to go deeper with a product expert? Because most of the people who watch a demo like this information. Or, hey, Julie, you did this, and I noticed because you told us you work for this company and you're in this industry, here's an industry report that people in your world may find really interesting. Now you're suddenly taking what could have been creepy and making it really helpful.
Yeah.
And that kind of thoughtful one-on-one responses is enabled today by generative AI. I'll deliver
Yeah.
that.
It really develops that relationship that you want with your customer. And I think, well, it keeps me coming back to brands that do that.
Yeah. And so that's part one of this thing. Part two of it is not really about data personalization, but it is sort of addressing this apocalypse, which is, and this is something I haven't written about or explored thoroughly, but I don't know why any marketer right now wouldn't be approaching all of their content as Q&As, because that's what Google's doing. So now go through your website. And by the way, you can have generative AI do this. Go through your website and create Q&As based on all the information that are in your websites, and then reformat that as blog posts or whatever.
Yeah.
But
That's really interesting.
and it can't be that hard. I mean, you know, have we done that yet for CMOhuddles.com or renegade.com, our media brand? No, but we will.
That's very cool. So Drew, I've heard that you have a new teammate named Becca that you've brought in. And it seems like she's kind of doing a phenomenal job. Like, so tell us about her.
So one of the things that we try to do at CMO Huddles, and we talk about inspiring B2B greatness, we wanted folks to see that generative AI is not just about content, and that it's going to be about using these tools to create new tools. So a good friend of mine, Noah Breyer, who is the founder of Percolate, is just a brilliant guy, came to me and said, hey, I know you have a lot of data on because of all the interviews you've done. How about creating a little bot together? So we did, and we created this thing called Becca. And Becca sits on top, if you will, of ChatGPT as a B2B CMO. And she has over 900, maybe, no, it's a lot more than that now, pages and pages of the notes and the recaps that we have from CMO huddles. I produce a recap every single week, and we've been doing this for 3 years. So that's 150, that's 300 pages right there. Then interviews, right? Hundreds of interviews. All of those were sort of uploaded into Becca. So now if you ask Becca a question about B2B marketing, she's much more likely to give you a very specific real-time answer with kind of quotes from CMOs with a lot more granularity and specificity. So it was really just a way of demonstrating where, for helping CMOs, because we don't have it on the website. You can find it. I talk about it occasionally, and I use it all the time.
It's so fun. So just to close things out today, we talked about your new teammate, Becca, but the human people on your team, why should you invest in them? I mean, this is sort of like duh.
Yeah, it is kind
yeah.
of a duh thing, but this is a moment in time that's a lot. Many of us have remote teams. CMO Huddles is 100% remote, but we started that way, and it's all good. But if you had employees who were in the office and then are remote, there's a disconnect that is much stronger than you think. And you really need, and so employees are probably certainly can be your best advocates. They have this, we know how they can do social amplification. We know what it means for when an employee wants to wear the brand. It's just a whole different thing. So, and this is a hard time mentally for a lot of people. It's been very stressful in the globe and everything else. So really thinking about employees' purpose. We did a recording yesterday with Jen Lim, who wrote the book Beyond Happiness and also co-wrote Delivering Happiness, and really talked about helping employees find their own purpose and then aligning it with the organization as a way of sort of getting them. And then there are all sorts of other things that you can do to bond with employees, but probably the most and simplest thing is get together with them like every quarter.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, even if you are a fully remote company, you could schedule, virtual coffees and engaging in events and things where people can get to know each other more. And so that you create this sense of belonging and a sense of community. I've just found that it really powers people up, and they just want to give more. They want to be there.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, employees want to connect with a company. They want to feel, they're spending a lot of time. They want to feel like their life has meaning.
Right. And they want to contribute.
And all of these things. And it's funny because, Julie, we have this coffee. We've been doing the coffee thing. And I feel like now we need to up it because the conversations are too superficial. And you need to find a way to make them more meaningful, that the same way you would if you got into a bar and say, what's really happening in your life? What are you doing? What are you thinking about? And so I think some of these exercises that you can do in the purpose area would go a lot farther, and they can be fun. They don't have to be really heavy, but just help people bond, because you tend to work at companies and stay at companies because you like the people. You don't want to leave
There's
them.
no question. And also, if you allow people to keep learning and growing, they're going to want to hang out. They're going to want to stay. That's a great thing.
It's true. Yeah. Jen Lim uses that sort of adaptive. We're in the adaptive age, and it's all about curiosity. And this is where I think CMOs really can take the lead. And I know that in our community, several of them do some really fun things about the way they share. Hey, I just learned this yesterday. They're not know-it-alls. They're learning every day, and they're learning from all sorts of people. So I would say that curiosity is sometimes in short supply, but it can't be with the CMO.
Well, Drew, this has been such a great conversation. Thank you so much for making the time today to come on and even wear your penguin hat. I appreciate that.
I'll put this back on and let's give you a couple of little these flaps. And Julie, thank you. I know how much work it is to produce a podcast, and really appreciate your efforts in this area.
Okay, thank you. And I'll see you all next time on PR Patter. Have a great day.